on most days. You got to deal with management. Joking.
You have to deal with management most places. But welcome, Tom.
Welcome, Tom. It's great to have you in. It's really a talented guy. So, anyway, Joy Taylor. So tonight the Raiders play the Chargers.
Yes.
And something is happening. I'm not a big believer in coincidences. But in the last 2 years with John Gruden, they are 4-10 post-Thanksgiving. They're awful. Last year, they were blown out by the Jets, the Titans, and the Chiefs, and lost to the Jags and Denver, bad teams. This year, they've been blown out by Atlanta and blown out by the Colts. So in 5 of the 7 games, if you go look 4-10 after Thanksgiving, 5 blowout losses last couple of years, and then some narrow losses. So something's amiss, something is off. Does Gruden, I don't know, does he wear players out? Not saying that. Are they still so thin defensively that they've fallen apart? You can't blame the injuries. Everybody in this league is dealing with injuries. The Eagles are all beat up last weekend. Don't ask me how the Eagles beat the Saints because they had 9 guys during the game walk off. So you got to overcome that. But if the Chargers at 4-9 beat the Raiders tonight, we have a little bit of a trend, which is the last couple of years with the Raiders. And we know it's not because they don't have talent. This year they beat the Saints and the Chiefs. So we know their talent's there. But they have been really bad post-Thanksgiving. And if they lose tonight, we got a trend, and it's not a good one for Captain John Gruden. With that, Greg Cosell, you bet football, you play fantasy football, you just love football, you get smarter. We call it our NFL meat sandwich. Greg Cosell, 41 years NFL films, joining me live. Okay, so I look at Justin Herbert, and I look at the draft position of the Chargers, and I think to myself, boy, if they could get 3 or 4, they could get a left tackle. And Herbert for the next 10 years. That feels like what they need, or kind of a centerpiece defensively, a linebacker. But be that as it may, we know that Herbert's the key to the future. What has he done you're surprised with? What has been the key, as we watch him tonight, to his success this year?
Well, I think 2 things that probably were concerns for a lot of people, Colin, when he came out of Oregon, and you're very familiar with quarterbacks and the Pac-12. I think there was the anticipation issue. There was a sense that he did not really throw with the needed timing and anticipation. And number 2, there was also a sense that the ball placement was not quite consistent enough. And I think those 2 things have somewhat been put to rest. He's made some outstanding ball placement throws, both from the pocket and on the move. And they've done a really nice job with the play design as well to help him with timing and anticipation, because you can create play concepts in which the ball does come out, and that can help a quarterback. But he's been really, really good in those areas, and those were 2 questions coming out.
Yeah. I want to talk, and we'll see him tonight. Let's talk Josh Allen. Wild at Wyoming. I remember watching him play Iowa and Oregon, and he was the wild pony. He was out of the barn. There was something there and a lot of energy. Then he goes to the NFL in his first year. He's wild. A completion percentage in the mid to high 50s. And now, in the last 3 to 4 weeks, he's a model of consistency. Coaching, scheme, what is it?
Well, I think his mechanics have become a little more compact. He may never look like Tom Brady, but I think that more throws now, you can see everything working together better. And mechanics are usually not talked about very often with quarterbacks. We talk about arm talent. We talk about mobility. We talk about many things. But I think you're seeing now his hips, his shoulder, his arm angle, all working more consistently on his throws. And I think that's the reason, Colin, that he's able to make more throws that require pace and touch. It's why he's able to hit Beasley on whip routes or pivot routes. It's why he's able to hit Stephon Diggs nicely on hitch routes or slant routes. Throws that you don't drive. They're not velocity throws. They're throws that require some pace and touch and precise ball placement. Because run after catch on throws like that, that's a function of the quarterback, not of the receiver.
So we're going to have a disagreement here. One of the things that always drove me crazy about Jay Cutler drives me nuts about Drew Lock. They play with a casualness.
I would agree.
Russell Wilson tends to play with an urgency. you sense with Drew Brees, every play he is completely focused. And Locke and Jay Cutler, though arm talent aside, it's just kind of sometimes they're just kind of experimenting. You can't do that in this league. So that alone, I don't know if you can correct, and it drives me nuts. But I hear you like Drew Lock.
Well, it's not a matter. Look, there's concerns with Drew Lock. There's no question. It's not a matter of sitting here saying, boy, I love Drew Lock. The tape tells me whether I like a player or not. And there's something there. You're right. There's a certain casualness to his game. There's a mechanical issue with his lower body. He opens up and steps into the bucket an awful lot. He falls away from throws at times. He drifts. And all that does make him look like he's playing with a certain lackadaisical feel. And then you do get into the decision-making, which comes down to game situations, understanding when you can make a certain throw and when you can't, understanding when a receiver's open and when he's not open based on the defense. So all these things, can they be taught and learned? They can. There's no guarantee that it will happen over time. So I don't disagree with you at all. But I watch him and I say to myself, God, there's something there. I don't know if it will come out.
Yeah. So there's a game this week, and if the playoffs started today, Seattle would go to Washington and play the Washington football team, and they're going to play this weekend. And it's an interesting matchup because the strength of Washington could be the weakness of Seattle. Their offensive line, when it gets overwhelmed and they can't run. So when you look at the Washington-Seattle matchup, obviously Seattle should win. They're at a different stage in their organizational structure. They're a championship team. Washington's rebuilding. What will Washington do to Seattle's O-line? What will it look like, in your opinion?
Well, we all talk about Washington's D-line, and it's really, really good. But they've become really efficient with some blitz concepts as the year has progressed. And if you look at Russell Wilson, you can go back to last year. He was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL last year, and about 60% of them came versus blitz. This year, more than half of his sacks have come versus blitz. So I look at that in this game because I think what you're going to see is Washington be selective but creative with their pressures. They've now started to use Cole Holcomb. They use Cameron Curl, the safety, number 31, who, since he's replaced Landon Collins, quite honestly, Colin, the tape tells you that he's a more versatile and better player than Landon Collins, and he's helped that defense, I think, take a step up.
Yeah, right now they'd win the division. Okay, I had my doubts about Lamar Jackson. I did. And but in the last year, I find myself defending him a lot. And I said this, maybe I said it to you last week, but when somebody's great at something, I accept the fact Shaq couldn't hit free throws, but he was so powerful, I will live with his limitations. And I keep hearing about Lamar can't do this. But I watched him against the Colts in the second half, 10 for 10. I watched him against Cleveland late. He does make certain throws. Kaepernick didn't have touch. He appears to at times have nice touch. Is there anything about him throwing that is getting better or you feel okay about?
He's struggling a bit right now throwing the football, and I think there's a number of reasons. Number one, there's a lot of unnecessary movement within the pocket. He's starting now to create his own pressure. He moves into pressure. Now, he can get out of that pressure because he's so gifted as an athlete, and so therefore you don't really think about it because he then makes a play. So the question is the balance, and this will be a discussion we're going to have with a lot of quarterbacks in these next number of years that come out of college, Colin, is the idea of how good a thrower from the pocket do you have to be if you have tremendous movement ability? Because right now, Lamar Jackson's not playing very well from the pocket, but he has tremendous movement ability, and their run game keeps expanding. They were a big zone read run team. Now they've added the counter gap scheme run game to it. So they do so much with the run game, and he can move extremely well. But if you're just talking about throwing the ball from the pocket and all that goes into that, right now he's not real good at that.
Okay. Jalen Hurts, I thought, added a juice to Philadelphia. And I said this, you could tell the way the Saints played in the first half. They didn't know what to get. They were reacting to everything. They weren't hyper aggressive. They didn't know what they were going to get. What did the tape tell you on Jalen Hurts of Philadelphia?
Well, you have to start with the poise and composure. That was very evident. Look, this kid's played at the highest level of college football and played well. So he has great poise and composure. But from a tactical standpoint, what the Eagles did was absolutely the right thing. They played to his strengths. There was motion. There was design quarterback runs. There was quick game, including screens. There was RPO concepts. There was getting him outside the pocket on design boots. What they were doing was playing to his strengths, Colin, and limiting his decision-making. Because at this point in his career, he's not quite ready for that. So they did absolutely the right thing. And the game allowed them to stay with that. As I was watching that tape and got into the third and early fourth quarter, I said to myself, I wonder what plan B would have been if the game was different, if all of a sudden they were down 24-13 late in the third quarter. But they never had to go to a plan B.
Yeah, well said. So, I watched the Giants-Arizona game, and, typical Giants rebuilding team, played great in Seattle, come home, they're flat. But what I really watched is a Giants defense, which is more than capable, struggle more than